Okay, we're live. We're going to be talking. This is Doc Brown, as always, and we're going to be talking ritualized violence in hockey. This is like modern hockey. We're going to talk about a few things today, but this is a interesting topic in the sense that, like, we're going to talk about what ritualized violence is and how it applies to hockey, and when fights happen in hockey traditionally, when they don't happen, when it's allowed. It's obviously not allowed by the official rules, but this is like unofficial rules that are enforced. That's why you have enforcers by the players, and they're not written in the actual rule book of hockey. It's technically not allowed, and the official consequences are what comes out of that. But these are unwritten rules that are pretty standardized. But obviously, with any unwritten rules, people have interpretations of them and how they follow them, and they change over time. And with official rules or laws in a country, those will be kind of tradition over time that is then formalized in laws. That's where our laws come from, especially in common law, but kind of any law system, they'll be ritualized eventually. That's how you get the court system and everything, and the official rules in any sport. The official ones would come out after a long time, and that's why rules will differ in different places. Like the NHL in North America, we have the American and Canadian leagues. Those change over time. In something like the NFL for football, they have the NFL rules. The CFL, they have their own rules. It applies to every sport. There's different rules, and those are official, and then there's different unwritten rules, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Doc Brown.
Yes.
Doc Brown. Hockey. Let's talk hockey and fights and when they happen and when they don't happen. And we're largely going to concentrate on the NHL, but there's other hockey leagues, obviously, like the very violent Quebecois.
Yeah. Well, and if we can too, I mean, it's we'll see where the conversation takes us. I also think it's kind of fun to do a sort of a comparing violence, unwritten codes of violence across different sports too, because that gets interesting to compare and contrast. Because I think hockey's probably, we were talking about before we started streaming, hockey is one of those last bastion of a more honest sport experience, in that it is basically a fight between two tribes, essentially. Right. I mean, let's be perfectly honest.
And in other sports, you might get actually arrested for stuff that they do in hockey. Like,
yeah. Well, you not only might, you actually can. We could. I mean, we'll see how much where it heads today. We could talk about MLB fights or Major League Baseball fights are very interesting to watch in comparison to hockey fights, because their fights happen in both sports, but they're totally different fighting cultures. The culture of fighting is very different across those two sports, and I contend that you actually see a difference in how the fights play out based on that cultural difference. Like,
I mean, in baseball, it's mostly brawls. You see them clear the benches when a fight happens, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, and there's all sorts of fun examples that we could talk about that too. I mean, there's the what is it? Was it Pedro Martinez throwing Don Zimmer to the ground? A 72-year-old man charges it and throws him to the ground. I mean, that's back in, what was that, in 03, I think. Like,
I don't remember that.
Oh yeah, there's all sorts of, so baseball fights are crazy. I mean, I think the hockey is a better example of sort of ritual violence at play, because the sport is more honest about what it is.
Yeah. And by the way,
yeah,
just while we're doing this, like, my audience is only about or a little bit below, it depends on the time. Like, hockey is very much like Scandinavian and American and Canadian.
Yeah.
And like less than 50% or around 50% of the audience is American and Canadian. So we might have to be a little extra explainy so that everyone understands it.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Always let me know when I need to explain more. Yeah, I'll do my best. Yeah. So, I mean,
and Central and Eastern European. Let's not forget about those guys.
Well, they're hockey people too, to a certain extent.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm adding them in.
Yeah.
As well as, like, it's American, Canadian, and then we have Northern Europe, and then Central and Eastern Europe. Yeah. And that's kind of it for hockey. It's not like a sport like soccer or rugby or cricket to a certain extent that's played worldwide. Or even baseball. Baseball is more worldwide.
Baseball is actually, it's a good point. Baseball has a wider,
Latin America, Japan, and the US Korea. And Canada. And Korea.
Yeah, Korea. Yeah. Yeah, no, but yeah. So anyhow, yeah, like
my Mexican buddy in the chat, I know nothing about hockey, is what he says, which makes sense because it's iced, right?
so I guess I'll do some caveats just for myself, just speaking for myself. So I was never a hockey player. I do
Mhm.
enjoy the sport. I was a lacrosse player for what
And we
that's
were both lacrosse
we were
players, which
both
is the most
lacrosse players.
comparable sport to
Yes.
hockey.
I
But it's
didn't play
also very North American
it's very that's particular lacrosse is particularly American Canadian.
because it's a Haudenosaunee, Haudenosaunee, also known as Iroquois game that was played like the Iroquois, the Haudenosaunee, they play in or I'm sorry, not play. They're from the US and Canada. They're from the
Right.
border of the Great Lakes.
Right.
But yes, and then Rubate, who is Australian. Rugby is just violence with rules. Why not hockey? All sports are ritualized violence.
Yeah,
to a
I
certain
think they
extent.
are to a certain extent.
Especially lacrosse, especially hockey. Maybe not
Yeah.
especially, but yeah.
I think it's sort of a question of like, I guess how different sports, all sport is ritualized violence. I would say for me the question is how comfortable is that sport with acknowledging that it's violent. And I think that some sports are more okay with that. I think hockey. I mean, hockey is the prototypical example of this is also there. I mean, in hockey, there's at least 2 games going on, right, at all times.
Mhm.
There is the actual hockey game, and then there is the fight that's kind of riding alongside the hockey game. I mean, so
Right.
I could go,
And there's points tallied, right? Like
Right.
there might be like somebody might be owed a beating
Yes.
from a previous interaction between
Yep.
that team. And the announcers know that.
Yep.
Just so anybody who doesn't watch hockey knows, the announcers will be aware that somebody did something in a previous game and did not like receive their punishment for it.
Right.
And the announcers will be thinking about that, wondering when it's going to happen. And then eventually somebody's going to drop the gloves, which has entered like colloquial use, like drop the gloves.
Yep.
From hockey, but that's like the sign, like, okay, square up, drop the gloves,
Right.
let's fight.
Yeah, and again, I guess maybe I should start just to define some terms as you've been talking
Exactly.
about.
Let's do that.
Violence. I'm taking a pretty broad definition of the word violence. I'm a Girard bro. I love René Girard, one of my favorite authors. He was passed away about 10 years ago. He was a French professor who did his career at Stanford, looking at the sociology of religion.
Yes, I'm aware of him.
Yeah, he has nobody, again, if anyone wants to read him, I highly recommend him. I will do my best to distill the essence of what he means by violence down. But his one of his big works is Violence and the Sacred, which is a awesome book. I highly it's very in depth, but I highly recommend it. It will change the way you see your own interpersonal relationships with people in your life. It's one of those books that uncovers some things for you.
And that was part of my work, part of my studies rather. And it's this is I haven't read the entire book, I don't think, but I've read parts of it for cultural anthropology.
If people are looking, chapter 6 is particularly appropriate for sport. So if you're chapter 6 if you're wanting to read a section of it, not the whole thing. In any case, so violence, I mean, all sport is ritualized violence. So this is why and that includes things like martial arts, right? It includes things like MMA. It includes things like, full contact karate. It includes, taekwondo. It includes judo. It includes wrestling. These are all ritualized violence. Some of them are kind of, as we were saying before we started streaming, some of them are, when we think of martial arts, sport martial arts, we think of, it's really kind of a duel. It's between 2 people. It's usually, unless you're doing some WWF like chair business, tag team, which is fun, but not really the same thing. And that, I mean, that is very violent, right? So you can see like images of and people tend to, there's some clutching of pearls when they see people bleeding in the octagon at the end of a fight, and it's like, well, okay, right. This is a duel, basically. There's rules. There's consent. There's consent. There's rules.
You're allowed to quit.
Yeah, it's not it is a 100% real fight. Mad respect to anyone who does that. I can't do that.
No, thank you.
But it is, let's say it's real violence, but it's real ritualized violence. You compare that to a street fight, and that's very different, right? Like if you or anyone has ever been in a street fight or witnessed an actual like street fight, It's a
Much more
very different
dangerous.
experience. Oh yeah, it's there's literally no rules. It's whoever's going to win, whoever's going to hurt the other person the most, or I mean potentially even kill them.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on the level of aggression and lack of control, let's say. I mean, if it's two guys, just that's why I always admonition to everyone: don't get in fights. It's not worth it.
Just don't.
It's just
Especially when you're like,
yeah,
when it's a street fight. A street fight could be like, that could be, you could call it a street fight when it's on the grass, but
right.
a lot of street fights might be in the city, like, or even not on the city, but in like a rural area, but on asphalt or concrete, and you can just die.
You can just die pretty.
You can kill somebody.
You can
and
kill
get
someone.
a manslaughter charge.
Yeah,
like you don't need to be involved in that.
Yeah, don't do that. It's not worth it. It really isn't. So I mean, I would say that something like a street fight is kind of more quote unquote real violence in the sense of like it's uncontrolled violence.
Right.
Most of what's, I mean, we have
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but people can have rules with how they do a street fight, but it's so much more broad. You don't know what rules the other person plays by.
Yeah.
Like in a street fight, a lot of people would say you don't go for the balls. You don't, once the other person is done, you're done. But not everybody plays by those rules. Those would be the rules that I would think a street fight does. But the other person might have a different view on it. They might think it's fine for other people to join the fight. Whereas for me, I would think you're one-on-one. You do one-on-one. No one else joins the fight. But not everybody, even in a similar geographic area, plays by those rules.
Very true. Yeah, because there's no shared fight culture in a street fight, right? There's no shared fight. There's no shared culture of violence. And I think that this is what we're trying to do here, Sam and I, is to distinguish like street violence, which you should never do, by the way. Like if you got to defend yourself, but never start stuff, and never, it's not, fights aren't worth it. They really aren't. I'll tell you as having somebody who's been in a fight, it's not worth it. It's not fun. Even if you win, it's not fun. Like you don't, it's just bad.
Yeah. What do you gain from it? And what do you risk losing?
Yeah, you risk legal consequences. You risk also, I mean, here's the thing, like, it might feel good in the moment to kick someone's ass, but then it's like I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just an overly empathetic person. Sometimes people are being nasty and need to be put in their place, but at the same time, I don't feel good doing that. It's not worth it. Like in the end, it's all just not worth it. Sometimes people don't leave you a choice. I understand that, but in any case, that's what I would call more like quote unquote real street actual violence. There's no shared culture of violence. Each sport, or as we've been learning, comparing the Quebecois League to the NHL, sometimes individual leagues within one sport have their own very distinct culture of violence. And so there's an agreed upon more or less code. And again, this is what this is called in hockey, is the code. It's as you quite rightly pointed out in the intro, it's not technically written down in like the NHL. Let's use NHL as the example. The NHL does not have like this is how fights happen, because
just so everyone knows, the NHL, I think I already said this, but the NHL is the North American League. It's American and Canadian teams in the league. That's the main league. And then there are other leagues below that, where I know in soccer or football, as most Europeans would call it. That's like the teams relegate and promote to the other leagues. For Canadian and American teams, it's the players that get moved up between the leagues.
So for example, like Seattle Kraken, go Kraken, by the way. A rough game last night, but that's fine. Whatever. Such as hockey. So like my team, Seattle Kraken, we relegate players up and down from hilariously Coachella, the Coachella Firebirds. So
they're not always near each other. It's
not always close by, which is very funny. Yeah.
Right. For the New York Rangers, like I'm from around Hartford, Connecticut. The New York Rangers, they like those teams, they own the lower teams. So then like the New York Rangers will draft a player, but they'll play for the Hartford Wolfpack, which is the team closest to me in the AHL, this lower league. And then like the Boston Bruins, they own the Providence Bruins, and they own the players in the Providence Bruins. And if someone plays good enough or somebody gets injured, they need to pull somebody up, they'll pull them from the Providence Bruins.
Yeah. So different sports kind of have, or in different leagues have a different way of rewarding or punishing success, I guess, in terms of players, or just it, like in the case of European soccer / football, entire teams can move up and down. So there's just different ways of doing it. So
Right.
like in the National Hockey League, which again is the highest level Canadian and American league, which is kind of cool that it's both countries. I like that. I think that's pretty neat.
And that's true for all sports in North America, except for all main sports. There's 4 big ones. And then soccer is the 5th one, which is also, but the only one that's not is football, like American football. We have the NFL, and then Canada has the CFL, which some players go to the CFL and then they get to the NFL, but mostly it's players go to the CFL, they'll never make the NFL, or NFL players go to the CFL when they're like almost going to retire, but they want to keep playing.
Yeah. And some notable rule differences too between Canadian and American football. So, but yeah,
right. And then there's Australian football, which is its own thing entirely.
It's its own thing entirely in true Aussie fashion. It's completely different. Yeah. So in any case, like there's no, as you quite rightly pointed out in the intro, there's no, like the NHL has been made very clear to fans, does not like fights and does not want fights, and has made changes to really dissuade people from fighting. I have strong arena football. Hell yeah. I have some strong opinions about that. But that being said, hockey as a culture has a way that you fight. And so I think, as I even was mentioning just recently, or just a few minutes ago, there's at least 2 games happening at all times in hockey. There's the actual hockey game, and then there's the, like you said, what happened 2 games ago, 3 games ago, 4 games ago, 5 games ago when we played these guys last.
Right.
Was there something that somebody did? Somebody said, did somebody, was there like a high sticking incident that wasn't caught by the refs? Okay, that's probably going to be, or was there a high sticking incident that somebody lost some teeth on? That person's going to lose teeth this next game, most likely.
It's a retribution type thing, and it can be something that maybe wouldn't ever be called by the refs, but if something happens that should be called by the refs and it isn't called by the refs, that's a situation where it's going to then be handled unofficially by the players on each team. And there'll be essentially an unofficial running tally in the players' heads that they're aware of. And they can communicate about this, but often they don't have to.
It's implied. Yeah. There's some strong implication. Going on there about who's going to get what. Yeah. I mean, and there's also just the kind of the more so sometimes it has to do with rule violations, or let's say play code violations, right? So this is going to come back around on you. But also sometimes it's just like, it could also be and that's, I think, probably fighting as in the best instantiation in hockey. It could also just be that people don't like each other. I mean, it could also just be like that like I mean, we'll see how much time we have today, but there's a note. So you're a Bruins fan, sounds like. So there's a notable thing that happened in 1979 at Madison Square Garden where the Bruins jumped into the stands to fight the New York Rangers fans, which is very fun to watch.
Which would be a part of like European soccer in general, but fans fighting is not a thing in North America. We don't do that.
Yeah, not usually.
Not usually.
Not usually. But it could also just be that, like, there's just teams that don't like each other, right? There's players that just don't like each other. There's just beef between certain, this just happens. Yeah. You get groups of humans, essentially tribes, right? These are tribes these are tribes. You have your sports tribe. You have the explicit tribal members who are on the ice, let's say in the hockey context, sometimes fighting each other, maybe through the loose metaphor of the game, or also just literally fighting each other. And then you have the fans too, right? Like the fans behind them, right? Like, so like, if you're, in that 1979 example, if you're a New York Rangers fan, you really hate Boston fans. And if you're a Boston fan, you really hate the New York fans.
Right. Like that has like cultural, historical implications for the cultural difference between New England and like Boston. For those who don't know, Boston is like, New England is not a state, but it's a historical region that used to be an official thing. And that's the 6 states east of New York. And there is a huge cultural difference between where I'm from, New England, and those 6 states are Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. And Boston is the capital of Massachusetts. It's also the unofficial capital of New England. So any Boston team is a New England team.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I know, I guess, it's good you point out that not everyone who watches this. Hello, everyone. By the way, sorry,
Yes.
I jumped right in.
That's right,
Is a hockey fan necessarily. If you want, I can send you just a quick video of something that happened 5 days ago about why there's a code. In terms of like the kind of injuries that can happen. I don't know if people want to like, if people are wondering why is fighting normalized in hockey, it's because you can actually get seriously screwed up from hockey.
Send it while we're still talking.
Okay, yeah, I'll send it right here. So this happened 5 days ago. This was a game between Ottawa Senators and the Minnesota Wild. Do you want me to send it in X or in
X?
X? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just a quick little video. This is pretty. I think it's pretty gnarly. Actually, a fight didn't break out, but this is an example of why sometimes people would fight because you can actually get seriously screwed up in hockey.
Yeah, and there was actually a time recently, I think I want to say the British League, there was a death. That was somewhat accidental, but I think the guy got charged with that. Very unfortunate.
Yeah,
and that was
dangerous.
That was by like an enforcer, a guy known to be violent, more than you're really supposed to within these rules.
Yeah, it's again, even the people who, even when you fight in hockey, there's still rules about fighting. But anyhow, so to see why there is a code in hockey, it's because you can get stuff like this. So this happened a few days ago. You can watch this if you want. You can. So it's really hard to see what happens, but we wait for the replay. Just wait for the replay.
To Hamonic, Carolina off to the bench. The referee is going to call a penalty here as Rossi is going to skate to that.
Oh shit!
So they're going to do a replay, and if you see what happened to Stützle.
Head back onto the power play. Tim Stützle dealing with a cut right near his left eye.
So watch what Hartman does to him in the faceoff.
Penalty for attempt to injure. The player is under review.
So that's an Ottawa player that just got injured by a Wild player.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. And Hartman is out on he's not able to play for the next few games because of this.
This is not something you see every
watch.
day.
And by the way, we're about to watch this, but if for some reason the player that did it, the player that actually did it himself is unable to take the punishment, someone else is going to for it.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at this.
But this guy Hartman is the guy that did it, or the guy that is
he's the bad boy. Yeah, he did a no here. Watch what he does.
Okay, and the Hartman guy, I'm sorry, who did the violence?
Hartman. Watch what he does to Stützle on the face-off here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Look at Hartman right off the draw.
You don't do that. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't. You
can actually kill somebody doing that.
That's not allowed. That's not part of the ritualized thing. So this is a transgression that's going to require
a massive transgression. So
this requires like a feedback.
There wasn't a fight. To the best of my knowledge, I didn't watch this game live. I just saw this. And actually, my wife, shout out to my wife, she's a big hockey fan, sent this to me because she knew I was prepping for this, so she helped me out. I got to give her credit. She's like, "You need to show them this." This is what can go wrong if somebody is really just not following even the unwritten rules. You're not allowed to jam someone's face into the ice and put weight behind it. You can kill someone doing that.
Right.
I'm actually kind of surprised that Stützle was able to get up and walk around even though he's bleeding. That looked painful.
That's scary. That's very scary on the neck.
On the neck like that.
And we'll talk about after how these fights are ritualized, but this is not like, just because fights are allowed doesn't mean this is allowed.
This is not allowed
by the refs or by the unofficial rules.
Yeah.
Which is, in these cases, when someone does like something like this is an extremely egregious, serious thing, but something lesser will still require retribution.
Yes. It's pretty bad. So I'm actually surprised. To the best of my knowledge, there actually wasn't a fight this game, and I think it has to do something with the players. Like the Ottawa players were all focused on the puck because it was a face-off, and they kind of didn't see exactly what happened. But it will be interesting to watch these two teams play again. I forget. I need to see when they're going to play again and however many weeks, because there's going to be something that's going to happen.
Right. Because if you don't realize it, but then you do realize it, then the next time they play each other, they'll be ready for it. They'll be watching. Everybody will be watching.
Yeah. So this is how beef starts, I guess. So it's an example of how beef starts between teams.
Just driving Stützle right
yeah.
to
So we're not going to see the retribution here, but you will eventually.
Yeah.
And both teams will know it's coming.
Oh yeah.
And depending on what it is, either they'll enact that on the actual player that did it, or they'll enact it on the team.
Yeah, they'll find someone else. And so this brings me to kind of again, it's Rene Girard's concept of violence and sacrifice. Girard writes about how humans, we like to think of ourselves
Wait, do you
as
mean
kind of
violence in the sacred?
well, violence in the sacred, but also sacrifice, because this has to do with
cool.
so it has to do with victimization in societies. So Girard writes about how as much as humans have tried, the only thing that controls violence is violence.
Right. And this goes back to a lot of cultures are feuding cultures in the sense that goes back to eye of the eye type thing.
Yep.
Well, but you'll see this in Celtic culture. You'll see it in Scottish and Irish feuding, which was then imported to the United States.
McCoys.
In the Hatfields and the McCoys in Appalachia, as well as other places. Like the Hatfields and the McCoys were, I think, somewhat descended from Appalachian culture, but they were
Scotch
farther
Irish.
west.
That's Scotch Irish.
Right. I mean, Appalachian culture is rooted in Scots Irish.
Heavily Scotch Irish, yeah. And feuds were part of that culture because the Scotch Irish were, for better or for worse, thrown into Northern Ireland, surrounded by Catholics, and it was a lot of constant violence, basically. And so it just became normalized in their culture. They brought that culture to the US. And I say that as someone who's descended from these people. So, I mean, it's fine. It is what it is. But, the only thing that controls violence is violence. And that's what laws are. That's what, that's why we have, laws, we have courts, at least in theory, right, is to control violence. But it is through state violence that we control violence, at least officially. So in the hockey analogy, this would be like the quote unquote official NHL rules. But then there's also kind of the stuff that actually happens on the street. And that in the hockey context would be this unwritten code of fighting. Mm-hmm. But if you're wondering why feuds start, why do people just pick someone out from an opposing team and start fighting in hockey? It's because of stuff like this, where there's a long memory for this kind of stuff. If you're jamming somebody's face into the ice, this will come. It all comes back around. But as you pointed out, it doesn't necessarily. So it's not necessarily going to be Hartman of the Wild who's going to get the fight. He might get a fight later, next time they play Ottawa, once he's back off of suspension, since that happened this week. But it could also just be next time that Ottawa and the Wild play, one of the Ottawa guys is going to find one of the Wild guys and is just going to kick his ass, because it's of course best if you punish the person who actually did the no-no, but the way that violence tends to work, particularly ritualized violence in human cultures, and hockey is kind of a human culture. Let's say it's a culture within a culture, a subculture. It's best if you can find the guy who did it, but oftentimes humans we're willing to kind of take a substitute. Of so somebody who stands in the place of the person who did the bad thing. And so
cause is Scottish in the comments here. But yes, someone else can take the retribution.
Well, and usually the someone else doesn't get to, they don't make that choice in themselves. Someone else chooses for them and says, "Oh, you're part of the Wild. Well, last time we played, you jammed our guy's head into the ice. So now I'm going to maybe do something, hopefully not that egregious back to you, but I might just you might lose some teeth. I might break your nose. I might do something to you. I might, something might happen to you, because we cannot let this stand. In the words of the dude, this aggression will not stand, man. There has to be something to balance it out.
So I'm sorry, I got a question here. Eye for an eye, from D503. The eye for an eye comes from Hammurabi's Code of Laws, which is the first example of a written law code that we have. And that was an idea where you have an eye for an eye, as in there is equal retribution for a transgression. So there were many laws in this, but one of the laws would be that if someone has their eye removed, then someone else in retribution, like the person who did it, will have their eye removed. And it might be not the person who actually did it, but the relation of that. And the relation of different people can decide who has the law used against them. So if someone harms someone else's son, then the son of the person who did it will be harmed. Then also, which is a good point to talk about, there are different rules for different classes of people in Hammurabi's law code, like a noble versus a commoner versus a slave. And there's a similar thing in hockey where there are specific rules between a star player versus a normal player versus a goalie. They all have different rules where, as a regular player, you can do something to another player and it might be considered fine. But if you do the same thing to a goalie or a star player, it would be considered a transgression.
As a general rule in hockey, if you mess with a goalie, something will happen to you.
Right. Goalies only fight goalies.
Amen.
And this is actually pretty true.
Yeah.
Not in the fighting sense, but there are different rules for what's allowed to be done in soccer against a soccer goalie. Just like in American football, there are different rules for and these are official rules actually in football for what's allowed to be done to a quarterback. The guy who's throwing the ball.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, quite right. Different sports have their own unwritten rules, and then the different positions within that sport have their own unwritten rules as well. So this is there's a hierarchy of ritual violence here. It depends who you are and what you did to another person. It depends what that other person was and what they were doing or what they didn't do. It's incredibly complex. Yeah. Hockey is a great microcosm of this, but this is also just hockey is just a great it's a little petri dish in which we can see this all play out. And it's literally kind of connected on the rink is kind of a petri dish. We can see the violence play out in this very interesting way. But this also connects obviously to broader violence within societies, because violence exists in every human society. It is just an unfortunate fact of humans. There's biological reasons for this, why we are like this. It's just how we are. So, if there is I would say maybe one of the big goals of civilizations or cultures is to attempt to control violence. You can never get rid of it, though. I think a lot of people, if I can opine briefly here, in the modern era, there's a real shift away from violence as we just don't want to have any more violence, but there will always be violence. The best you can do is control it. Hockey is a great example of how you can control violence through both written and unwritten means. So yeah, here we got goalies going. Looks like maybe.
But the ref stops him and the goalie kind of. So we'll just play that again.
Yeah.
You see this, the goalie comes up, there's a brawl happening, and the goalie from the other side, he slaps his stick on the ice. He's challenging the other goalie.
Yep.
And then that goalie, who generally only fights goalies, drops his stick as well, but is stopped. And then the goalie who tried to fight just throws his hands up because he's not going to get his fight.
And if I could point something out here too, that we're talking about earlier, what's one of the ways we can really tell, one of the most blaring ways we can tell this is not street violence. Both of those goalies had weapons and they dropped their weapons. They dropped the sticks.
You don't use the stick in the fight.
You do not use the stick in fighting. If you do use a stick in fighting in hockey, you're going to have something really bad happen to you or to one of your teammates, because that's
outside those traditional rules.
Just like when Hartman slams Stützle's face into the ice. These are things you don't do. You just don't do them. If I can, so he's kind of a big name going around lately in terms of we want to get into goons, the concept of the goon.
Yeah.
We can do goons. Yeah. Never goon, as they say. Never goon.
In the background, I'm just going to play this, but keep going.
Yeah. I can send you another one here. So Matt Rempe of New York Rangers is kind of if you watch hockey, he's kind of a thing. He's sort of a meme in and of himself, known for going around starting fights, doing kind of insane shit. If I can be so bold. There's an example of just kind of.
Yeah. Okay. So before Rempe, what we see here is, so these two players, this is the St. Louis Blues and the, what team is that?
Panthers.
The Panthers.
Florida. Yeah.
Florida Panthers. So what's going to happen? The puck drops and these two sides, these guys, what we don't see or hear is they have agreed to each other. Clearly, you can tell because they drop gloves at the same time that they're going to fight.
They know that before the puck drop. They know that. Yeah.
They know that when the puck drops, then it's time for them to fight, and they've agreed to it. It's consensual in the sense that both of them are agreeing. So they're going to drop their stick, they're going to drop their gloves, and notice sometimes they'll both drop their helmets. In this case, neither drops their helmets. But if one of them were to pull their helmet off, the other one would then also pull their helmet off. Because if they don't, and one of them keeps their helmet on, or if a helmet is removed, then that's another transgression that requires additional retribution.
You have to kind of match the risk, right? So all violence involves risk. If your helmet's off, then the other person's helmet also needs to be off. So yeah. Because obviously punching a helmet sucks. I don't know if you've ever punched someone with a helmet on. It's not fun.
No, it's not.
Yeah. So
yeah, and they're fighting, and I don't know how this fight ends, but I know when it ends, and that moment is right now.
Yep.
When one guy drops and Bennett wins,
it's over,
and that beef is over. They finished it. They did their fight, and it's over. They're both in a penalty.
They get a 5-minute roughing penalty. Is pretty standard practice. So usually, the NHL is really dissuading fights, but it's such a part of the sport culture for hockey. You'll get if it's just a normal fight like what we saw right there, you get 5 minutes roughing.
And this is why it happened, because he knocked him into the ice when he wasn't paying, or the glass when he wasn't paying attention.
Slammed into him. Yeah. Body checked his head basically into the glass, which to be fair is pretty a dick move. So
right, it's a dick move, which is why it requires them to fight over it.
But note that
right now you can see them talking.
Right, but note that he did not slam his head into the ice.
Right.
Right.
That's way more serious.
Yeah, way more serious. Yeah, and here's
and they're fighting. You're allowed to grab, and then the game continues.
Yeah.
You're allowed to grab. You're not allowed to elbow someone's head into the ice. That's not okay.
Speaking of elbowing, if you want to play the one I just sent you for Matt Rempe.
Yeah, we're going to share this. But Matt Rempe is a relatively young player, and he's considered a lot more of an old school enforcer. In the type of way, but there's discussions about if what he's doing is okay. So which one's Rempe? Oh, so
Rempe's in the white.
Bam. Okay, we'll see that again.
They're gonna do a slow mo. The video I think actually slows it down. Yeah.
So that's not cool.
No.
Rempe hits him in the back into the ice.
Rangers versus Stars. So this is New York versus Dallas. And see, there's a fracas that's starting here because it was so egregious.
Right. Yeah. And if it were a less egregious penalty, or not penalty, but if it were a less egregious transgression, I mean, it was a penalty. I think they probably called him on that. But
I think he got ejected from the game and lost. I think he was suspended for this one because you'll see what he did to Miro Heiskanen.
But this type of thing is what's going to start a broader brawl because it's so egregious that it's not going to require just a fight. And it can't be decided on just a fight because of the egregiousness of it, because his back was entirely turned.
Yes.
It's something that requires an immediate reaction from everyone on the ice. So they're just going to jump in immediately, which is what happened. So they're going to do the replay, but this guy's hurt, or not hurt, but he's in pain. And now he
might actually have a concussion. You'll see how Rempe hit him. I don't know. Yeah.
And right here they got Rempe, and you see how big he is compared to everyone else.
Rempe's gigantic. 6'7". He has very long, and so then there's some words exchanged. This will come back to him. Yeah.
And you can see his hockey hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this right here, this guy's got it. Bam. That glass rarely does it bend that much.
Yeah. So watch. He elbows him in the neck.
I see. That's worse than I thought.
Yeah, it is worse than you thought. It's always worse on the replay.
Yeah. So this guy just into him. That was unnecessary. He really had an elbow. That was intentional.
It was incredibly, clearly intentional. So yeah, this is so, yeah.
So why did he do that?
Because it's Matt Rempe.
Oh, okay.
Now, this is how he plays.
What a dick.
I mean, it's pretty bad.
What would that call have been, or what was that call from the refs?
I think it will. Let's see. You could probably turn the audio on.
5-minute major.
Major.
5-minute major penalty. Yeah, but there's more.
Before he announces it, before the ref announces it, and this is in the Dallas rink, by the way, the fans are booing. because they're not happy with what just happened.
It's not
with his numbers and his nameplate facing, I don't know what is.
New York Rangers has a 5-minute major for elbowing and the game misconduct. Dallas over 24, 2 minutes for roughing. New York over 7-3, 2 in the minor for roughing.
And I actually wish that they were at the Rangers rink, because I would have liked to see how the fans responded, their own fans, because it's possible that they would be not happy with this, even if it was their own. Even if it was their own team. I'm
biased. I'm going to say New York Rangers fans like this kind of shit. I think they like Rempe. This is the New York...
I'm biased against them as well. So
yeah, this is the New York vibe, and there's a long history of Rangers being like this. That's what I'll say. So yeah,
I don't approve. I wouldn't be happy if a Bruins player did that either. But obviously, since it's the Rangers, who I hate, and it's unfortunate that the Hartford Wolfpack, which is like my closest team in the minors, is part of them. I'm not going to drive an hour and a half to Providence to see the farm team of the Bruins play.
Yeah.
But yeah. God, that guy's huge.
He's like the Slender Man, but big. He's like got such long arms.
Yeah.
So Rempe does stuff like that.
We talked about the guy from the British League.
Skate. Yeah, that's, you can die. But the thing too is, so like Rempe has basically created, it seems like he's doing this on purpose. He's crafting a persona. He's crafting a kind of renown for himself. Mm-hmm. He wants to be known as the guy who does this. But it's interesting because if you want to see another example of him meeting his match, I can send you this. So Rempe skates around and does kind of nasty shit, if I might be so bold. I'm very biased on this. I try to be very, measured in my content, but not today. Today we're talking about sports, and so I can be very blunt. Rempe has created. He's essentially an outlaw, right? He breaks both the written and unwritten rules of the league so much that people will just start kind of fighting him. So this is an example of him.
But it's tough because he's very large. There's not a lot of people that can take him.
But this is a fight against Mathieu Olivier.
Kind of a mini playoff. And here we go. This was advertised.
Olivier knocks his helmet off. Rempe starts to turn his head, which is not something you should do.
Well, why does this guy? What team is this, by the way? And why
this the Blue Jackets.
Is that a new logo?
I think they rebranded.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, some of the newer jerseys are kind of, I don't know.
But he still has his helmet on, whereas Rempe's came off.
Yeah, but notice that Olivier is not taking his helmet off because Rempe has done this to like almost every single team that he's played against. He just keeps doing this. He keeps getting suspended, and so this is a great example of how when you go up against somebody like Rempe who doesn't really care about the rules, then all of a sudden you don't need to care about the rules as much.
Right. And so no one's going to be mad at this guy for doing this with Rempe because it's understood that Rempe is already acting outside of the general understanding of the rules.
Exactly.
Of engaging in this sort of violence.
Yep.
So I'm glad that happened for that point.
Yeah.
And Olivier is also a large man.
He's a big Quebecois dude. Yeah.
Got him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the Blue Jackets. I didn't realize they did that.
Yeah.
That guy had a Dallas Stars jersey on at this game.
Just gleefully happy to see Rempe get smashed. Yeah.
He said he was excited about the opportunity.
Yeah. So I mean that sucks. But yeah, Rempe is not a normal enforcer. There's a position, an unofficial position of an enforcer, which is generally a large guy who might be a general player, but they might also not play that much. They might sit on the bench. In hockey, there's only 6 guys on at any time. There's the goalie and then 5 players. And if someone's in the penalty box, it's a 4-on-5. It's a power play.
Yeah.
Or it can be 4-on-4. It can even be 3-on-5 or 3-on-4 and whatever. But similar to in soccer where somebody gets a red or 2 yellows, which is a red, they're going to be down a man, but that's for the whole game. And in this, it's just for a specific period of time. but certain enforcers will sit on the bench the whole time until it's time to use them when someone needs to be enforced.
Yes.
And if somebody like these teams, they need to do that. They need to enforce their for their, it would be called like prestige, essentially prestige or go ahead.
Renown. Well, I mean, in ancient Greek, this would be kleos. This is renown. This is your the way people see you, the way other people see you, the way, in this case, the way other players and specifically other teams see your team is very important for maintaining something of a homeostasis, as much as you can have in a sport that's violent. But
and if you don't enforce that, if your team has a transgression against you, and you don't enforce it against that other person, then your team is going to lose respect, and then more of them will happen because there's not a mutual respect like there generally is. So you essentially are forced, just like in an honor culture, a feuding culture, you're forced to then have an enforcer enforce your rules and gain back that honor through that retribution.
Yeah. I mean, and this dynamic is not just a hockey dynamic. Hockey, I think, is probably the best example of it, or one of the best examples of it. But if I can show, I mean, so you and I both played lacrosse. Yeah, and I love lacrosse. I love hockey too. I could never skate well enough. So I was a lacrosse guy. I was a football and lacrosse guy. Lacrosse also kind of has a very, it's different from hockey in many ways, but it's also very similar. This is an example of maybe instant consequences. So, as you've just got done quite nicely saying that, in hockey, sometimes there's an instant consequence for what you've done. Sometimes you kind of wait a little bit till the next time you play that team. But, sometimes you can have instant karma, as they say. This is an example from box lacrosse. This is indoor lacrosse, professional lacrosse indoor. This is Saskatchewan versus Calgary from several years ago. This is an example of instant payback.
Again doesn't work.
Okay, and just to explain just the positions here, you have you see the goalie here. This is the goalie in the box, but you have these different positions. There's a long stick defender who has an extra large stick, and that's generally a larger player, and that guy is often like a bit of an enforcer in a way.
And this is box lacrosse,
at least a more physical player.
This is box lacrosse, so it's all short. There's no long stick D in box lacrosse. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more. Yeah, I played field lacrosse. I never played box, but it's a little bit more like hockey.
I guess I saw it wrong then.
Yeah, no, it's fine. You're good. Yeah, it's indoor, but it's two Canadian teams. Canadians, I will say, having played against some Canadian teams since I'm on a border area in lacrosse, Canadians take lacrosse very seriously, probably more seriously, I would say, than American players. I always enjoyed playing Canadians because I could actually get real rough and tough with them because that's how they play. And you can see that in this example right here.
In lacrosse, in Canada, lacrosse is a bigger sport than it is in America.
Yes.
In America, it's more regional. It's generally only played in the Northeast, where I'm from. Which
it's been big out. Well, I mean, it's not as big out here as it is out for you, but the Pacific Northwest has had a pretty decently vibrant lacrosse culture for about 20 years now.
Yeah. In New England, it's a big sport.
Yeah.
And the best college is Syracuse, which is in upstate, very near the Haudenosaunee.
Boo. Boo.
Yeah.
Boo.
And
boo.
What? Boo yourself.
No, boo Syracuse.
Bleh. Boo Syracuse.
Boo. Yeah.
Yeah. And also hockey is bigger in the Northeast than it is in other parts of the US.
And the pass to Greer again doesn't work. One to shoot.
Oh, I want to see that again.
And the pass to Greer again doesn't work. One to shoot.
Yeah, Greer's going to the box, deservedly so.
Greer took the shot.
Oh!
Teammate, that ball, I think, hit him right in the face.
Oh, God.
And the pass to Greer again doesn't work. One to shoot.
Yeah,
wait, why did that happen? It looks like
so the let's see, the Calgary defenseman. So Calgary is in white. The Calgary defenseman, I think, got
and the pass to
there was a dirty hit.
Work. One to shoot.
Oh yeah, he pushed.
Greer's
So Saskatchewan.
I feel like he didn't deserve that.
Maybe not.
Seeing it.
Maybe not, but he pushed him. He actually punched first. It's really difficult to see. So the player in black actually smacked. Like I think he it looks like he hit him in the
Let's
neck.
do our own slow-mo.
Yeah.
Let's do our own slow-mo here.
And the pass to Greer again doesn't work.
Oh.
One to shoot.
I
Yeah.
see.
He hit him like in the throat, it looks
And
like.
that pass to
Yeah.
Rivera again doesn't
You don't do
So,
that?
so this type of hit, if you grab your stick like this and
Yeah,
you
cross
hit,
check, something like that. in the
that
face.
is that is allowed. You're not allowed to do it at the neck. You have to hit him in the body, and
Yeah.
you can't hit them from the back or the side. It has to be like pretty much straight on.
Yeah.
But what he does is he hits him in the neck, and he might have been unintentional with it, but that
But
doesn't
it
mean it's not
doesn't
gonna.
matter. It doesn't matter because there's an unwritten rule in lacrosse
And that
similar to hockey that
pass
you
to
don't do that.
Rivera again
Yeah.
doesn't work.
So there's instant retribution.
And you also don't hit them. You hit them with the stick, whereas he hits him almost with the what's the top called? Why am I forgetting that?
The head.
The head. Okay,
shoot.
I didn't forget. Bam.
Yeah,
Punches him.
Just
Greer's
punches
going
him
to the
right, yeah,
box,
this-
deservedly so.
Yeah.
Greer took the
Boom.
shot
Yeah, just knocked him
from
out.
his own
Yeah.
teammate.
I wish they showed the initial replay, but yeah, that's the type of thing that can happen. It's very similar to hockey.
Yeah, it's
in a
very
lot of
similar
ways.
in this respect. Yeah, I mean, I guess to share an anecdote from my time playing lacrosse, there was one. So I was so I played field lacrosse, and so I was a long stick defender, and my whole thing was that if you shot on goal, you were going to get knocked down, and if you shot on goal, you were going to get knocked down, and that was just the rule. That was the unwritten rule that I played by, and so I established that paradigm. Because to be fair, my stick skills weren't as great as other people, but I came into lacrosse from football and I was used to hitting people at full speed and getting hit at full speed.
And they're both contact sports.
Both contact sports, but I would say that at least back in the early 2000s in Seattle, the lacrosse culture was more controlled and I was playing it more like a Canadian. So I would just run people over, and I did spend a fair amount of time in the penalty box. But the reason I did that was because if you shoot on goal, I want you to be scared next time you shoot on goal that I might run you over. And
Right.
so there was one time, famously, at least for me and my friends who would remember, high school lacrosse, big deal out here. Not really, but this is how you know I'm getting older. It's like Bruce Springsteen, Glory Days. Here we go.
Glory days, yeah.
Glory days. So I checked this guy. I knocked him to the ground because he shot on goal, and I was like, you don't do that and not get some payback, because I want you. That's my job as a defender. Because I cared about my goalie. I liked my goalie. So I knock him down and I get up and I'm walking away and he swings at my head and I see the punch coming out of the corner of my vision. And so I just kind of like bob my head like a bob and weave. The ref didn't see the hit because I probably should have gotten a penalty for the hit. Didn't see the hit, but saw the guy swing at me, and I got him kicked out of the game because I started the fight and then let him get kicked out for the fight. So
you didn't hit him back when he swung?
No, because I had already I plowed into him. I knocked him.
So
over.
you got what you deserved, but the ref only saw his part of it.
Well, so because
that's too far.
He shot on goal, and I was right in front of him, so I knocked him over because it's a contact sport. And
Right. No, yeah, that
it's
makes
a
sense.
contact sport. Now, did I go pretty hard on him? Yes. So, I mean, I guess I'm somewhat guilty of gooning. Oh, well, I guess. But the thing is that
Don't say it like that, please.
Yeah,
Not what it means.
never goon. No,
once.
like, I mean, I was basically establishing my own paradigm of violence, which is you don't shoot on the goal without getting hit by me, because that's part of a defensive strategy as well, right? And it's the same thing in hockey, right? Like, and lacrosse and hockey share this, that like you want, as a defender specifically, you want to get in the minds of the offensive side, right? You want them to be a little scared of you.
Yeah.
In my back.
Sorry. Yeah. I pulled you off, but
yeah. So I mean, I wasn't. So I knocked him down. I knocked him down. Like, I put my hands together. I didn't cross check him. I just knocked him down. And maybe I did push up off him a little bit to get out of the ground, but whatever. I had landed on top of him. Yes, scalping. But so then I get up to go, and the play moved. We had cleared the ball up the field, and you as a lacrosse player will know what I'm talking about. And sorry, everyone else who doesn't know lacrosse, that we had already cleared it to the middies at that point. And so, but I just
it's similar to clearing in soccer, where the defenders clear the ball or the goalie clears the ball by kicking it to the other side of the field.
But here's the thing with this guy. So he tried to start a fight with me, but he didn't square up. He tried to punch me from behind.
Right.
And so I just ducked out of the way because I knew that if I punched him back, I was also significantly larger than him. I was going to get kicked out of the game if I punched him back. So I just let him swing, and then he got kicked out of the game. So that's an example of a meta game, right? The meta game of violence happening in both lacrosse in hockey. It's like sometimes you will get hurt. Sometimes you will put a hurt on other people, but there's ways you do it. There's ways you don't do it. I did knock this guy down, but I knocked him down in a way that was part of the unwritten rules. That was okay. He then tried to punch me in the back of the head. That's, according to unwritten rules and written rules, quite illegal. He gets kicked out of the game. So that's just an example of like how that you can use. Players in lacrosse and hockey can use this somewhat unrestrained kind of violence that you tend to get in the sport to your advantage if you play the metagame correctly, because it's a psychological battle with the other team to figure out, like, if I do this, are they going to retaliate? Well, let's see. Is it worth the risk? Is it not worth the risk? What I was not doing, I was not running up for people behind and hitting them in the back of the head like Rempe does. So before you judge me too harshly, I would not have done something like that.
I understand. That's
a no. Yeah.
And that's a no to anybody.
Yeah, I always hit people straight on, right? Like that was my whole thing. Yeah.
And by the written rules, like I was telling you this story. So you played defense, but I played center midi, which is very similar to the position in soccer. Like I had the ball, I had gotten the ball, and I was about to pass it with the stick, and I did pass it, but I thought the ball had fallen in front of me. I didn't think I got the ball out, and I got the ball out, and just as I got the ball out to pass it, two guys sandwiched me on each side, and they hit me. They cross-checked me legally, and I thought the ball fell down. And so I, like, as soon as they hit me, I start swinging with my stick. Like and so I think I'm fighting these guys, and they don't fight back, and I don't realize it at first. And they the ref blows the whistle, and then I look down and I realize the ball isn't in front of me. And it would be totally okay for me to start hitting them with the stick.
Right.
Like in certain ways, like you can hit, like, in certain ways. Usually you can't hit, like, you can't swing the stick, but sometimes you can't like swing it at the head.
You can't swing it at the head. You can swing it at the arms, basically arms, hands, elbows, shoulders,
not back.
Yeah.
And we have pads.
You have to control. Yeah, it has to be a controlled stick check. I mean, I also may or may not have bent my stick around somebody once who was actually my own player because he was a dick and deserved it. So, I mean, so yeah.
But I think the ball's dropped, and I think I'm swinging around and using my body over the ball to protect the ball, and and hopefully other guys will come in.
Right. Yeah.
Like hopefully other guys are going to join in and either help me get the ball or help me get the opposing players off.
Right.
But because the ball was out of the area, I just got like a personal penalty.
Yeah,
I was in the box.
Yeah, but it was unintentional, right? You didn't mean to. Yeah, you thought you had misread the situation.
Even my own team thought that it was fully intentional on my part.
Oh.
Like that's how bad it was. Like, but I remember I really, really thought that the ball was in front of me. I did not know. No one believed me, but that is the truth.
Lacrosse scrums can be quite intense. I mean, like rugby is known for scrums, but lacrosse can get some big things. Sometimes there's situations where people are just fighting over the ball and nobody can really pick it up because it keeps getting knocked out of people's sticks. And so it can get like sometimes 3 people on each side going in for to try to get this ball. Right. Which, as you know, as a lacrosse player or former lacrosse player, is pretty dangerous because whoever gets that ball can usually get a fast break and oftentimes score, because sometimes it's a one-on-one with the goalie if the D misreads that. But anyhow, we're talking shop. People are like, what the hell did you mean? Sorry.
Right. It's just like it's
lacrosse talk.
If the ball is on the ground and there's multiple players around it, that's like the most dangerous time, because you have to overpower the other players to get to that ball.
Yeah.
And it's on the ground. It's hard to pick up. Like if a ball's on the ground and no one's around it, it's very easy to pick it up.
Yep.
Because you just you put the stick down, you pick it up with the head.
Yeah.
And then
or you can even in lacrosse, you can actually kick it to yourself, which is you can kick it to, and you can also kick it out of scrums too, at least in the league I was playing, and they allowed you to do that. So yeah.
But if there's like 3 sets of legs around you, it's hard to do
nuts. That. Yeah, it's nuts. It's a good way to. It's actually, those situations too are kind of fun, but they're always a little terrifying. It's a good way to get like a stick in your like in your ribs, because people, maybe not even intentionally, there's a lot of stick swinging happening, and to get the ball out. Yeah. In any case, instant retribution does sometimes happen. We've looked at sort of some fun hockey and then one lacrosse example. But if you got some time,
we got time.
You want to look at fighting in a fighting culture in in a totally different yet still very American sport, we can look at baseball fights.
Oh, let's do it. Which are
yeah.
generally, we were talking about this before we went live. These are, I'm going to search baseball clearing. The
I actually
benches.
have some pulled up if you want me to send them
Yeah,
to you.
share them.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't even mention it. Just share
Okay,
them
all
and then
right.
tell me you have.
Okay. I have shared one. This is Robin Ventura versus Nolan Ryan. This is from 1993. So back in speaking of glory days.
Oops. Let me just.
1990s MLB was wild.
Yeah, it was.
There was a lot of steroids.
Look at this.
Now, was that intentional?
Probably.
The pitcher hitting him?
Probably.
Because that's a thing just for
Yeah.
the non-Americans and Canadians. And there's other countries that like baseball, but this is one that our Mexican friend will probably understand. But regardless, Europeans don't play baseball generally. So like if you hit, sometimes the pitcher accidentally hits the batter.
It could be accidental.
It can be accidental, but
I don't know. So again, maybe Ryan meant to hit Ventura. Maybe he didn't. Ryan is the pitcher here. But yeah, Ryan's the.
But if it's perceived that
it's perceived that way, at some point it almost doesn't matter. Like it, just like in a bar fight, whether you meant to look at the guy's girlfriend weird or not, if he's coming towards you to fight you, it kind of at that point, who is right and who is wrong doesn't matter. It is now a fight. Right.
Yeah. And so hitting the batter with the ball, that's a automatic walk. That's like you take the base. The batter will take the base. But there's also the unwritten rules where if the batter is hit with the ball and it's perceived as an intentional thing, or even if it's not, but it's like if it's like negligent or something, that can require retribution. And we're gonna see what happens.
Yeah.
Watch out.
So, but Ryan was a big man. And we're going to see that here. Headlock.
And look, that wouldn't happen in hockey in general. They're not gonna do a headlock.
No, they're not gonna headlock. Yeah.
But
and just punches him over and over again. That's a pitcher's right arm hitting you in the face.
That is not good.
Yeah.
And look, everyone joins in. This is not a thing where it's considered a one-on-one fight. They don't have that in baseball.
No.
It's usually going to be clear the benches. The coaches might fight. The line coaches, the main coach, they might join in. And hopefully we get a good shot of the benches clearing as well. If
I have another example of that too. If yeah.
Yeah. Look at this. Just chaos.
It's just chaos. Yeah.
Good Lord.
I mean, minutes later, it's still happening. It just keeps going.
Comes up, and there they go.
Oh, it's a replay.
It's a replay. All right, so I'll send you another one here. This is this is a super famous fight that I'm sending you here in MLB history. Shout out to my friend who's a baseball fan who was sending me these, because I had much help in research for this. Yeah. So this is Red Sox.
Nobody out.
Oh, okay. So Red Sox Yankees.
Yeah. Well, you explain that. You're in New England.
Red Sox Yankees is probably the oldest and most famous in baseball rivalry. This is New York versus Boston, just like all these other rivalries. This is New England versus New York, which is a greater rivalry between the two regions, and also that carries over into all these sports rivalries. So the Red Sox pitcher, that's my man right there. Martinez right here.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's spelled Martinez, which is incorrect. But that's fine.
Martinez. Yeah.
This is from MLB Official, and they said Martinez. That's not a name.
Yeah. It's from 2003. I don't know. MLB fix your page. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. So he hits, we'll just play that again. He hits the batter.
Yeah.
Third, nobody out.
Dude, that's crazy. That was intentional. It has to be.
This has to be intentional.
This is over the head.
He's just looking at him. He's like, what the hell, man?
Must have hit the bat of Kareem Garcia, and a foul ball, and Garcia immediately pops up and screams at Martinez.
Is that cheater? No.
Yeah, that was perilously close to his head.
Everybody's just looking. They're waiting to see what happens.
Yeah, they're going to see what's going to happen.
The last time the Yankees and Red Sox played a 2-1 game won by the Yankees.
God, old school. That was Jeter, wasn't it?
Yeah, that is Jeter, I believe. Yeah.
And also Jeter, as a side note, Jeter as a player is very, very, I forget the specifics of it, but he like went to the Yankees, was going to go to the Red Sox, and that player is very hated
Yeah,
by
he's
New England.
yeah. Well, who likes the Yankees really? Am I right?
Yeah, the Yankees are like, they're like the New England Patriots of baseball.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm not a huge Mariners fan, but I don't like the Yankees.
I thought it hit his bat too. I thought it hit him in the back. Really? It was behind his head.
And Martinez now pointing. That's the wrong thing to do. That's inciting right there.
So notice the announcers are like, he's pointing.
It keeps going. So yeah, this yeah.
That's inciting right there.
The line coaches are up. They're talking crap.
Control.
Oh, no. That was near the head, too.
You see the umpire run out to try to stop it?
Yeah, he knows immediately what's about to happen. And notice I think that's the umpire, that's the referee. And then the catcher is like, he looks like he's about to get up, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, he sure is. Bench is clear. This is the most fun thing to see in baseball.
Keep watching because it clears in a way that is pretty impressive.
For a reason.
Absolutely.
Look at that.
That's 72-year-old Don Zimmer.
That the black guy's 72 years old?
No, Don Zimmer is the guy who gets thrown to the ground. He's 72 years old.
Well, he did run at him.
He did run at him, but he's a 72-year-old coach running at the opposing player. I mean,
whoa, okay, that's a player, but don't look. You're 72 years old. Don't run at a guy. Don't run at a 30-year-old man. That's insane.
No, but this is, yeah. So this just shows you how much how big the hatred is between these two teams, right?
Yeah.
And it keeps going, but it is interesting. So am I cherry picking these examples? Yes, but I'm cherry picking them for a reason to show the difference between sports like lacrosse and hockey, where fighting is more normalized, and baseball. Fighting happens in baseball, but when it happens, it tends to be catastrophic, like entire big, huge fights that keep on going. 72-year-old coaches are getting thrown to the ground, and it tends to go crazy. And I think it really has to do with the fact that fighting, there is kind of no unwritten code for fighting in baseball.
It's much less common. So
it's much less common.
Not necessary. The cops are getting involved, actually.
Yeah, the cops are getting involved here because I think, you
can tell that this is Boston just based on the green, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, they're arresting or detaining that guy.
Yeah, I think that was a fan who jumped in.
Oh, okay.
So it's not that bench clearing fights don't happen in hockey. They do, but they tend to not. So there's far more bench clearing fights in baseball than in hockey. And it has to do with the fact that in hockey, fights happen more frequently. So the pressure is let off more frequently throughout like the season, let's say. But in baseball, you're not really even allowed. There's not even an unwritten rule about fighting. You just are not supposed to do it. So when it happens, it explodes in gigantic ways, as we've seen there. I mean, that's yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, Purple Haze, who's South African. I know people here who don't even watch baseball but own like a full kit. I haven't watched. The last time I watched a baseball game was when I was at a baseball game years ago, but I wear a Red Sox hat. Like the Red Sox in New England are like a cultural thing.
It's a cultural, yeah.
Well, usually it would be weird to wear. Yeah. It would usually be weird to wear like sports gear if you don't actually watch the team. But with like a team like the Red Sox, it's not weird because it's like a cultural allegiance type of thing. But I'm just going to let these play in the background, these bench clears, because
bench clears. Yeah.
If you get like a clear picture of it, it's a really cool thing.
Well, and the reason why the fights tend to start with pitches is because those pitches can actually, like, they can seriously hurt you.
Right. The ball goes like 90 miles an hour.
Faster than that if you get a really top level. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
incredible. Yep.
Yeah.
Bam. He points the bat at him. That was badass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Polynesian. I like how there are different like ethnicities associated with different sports.
Well, can I share another fight story from my own illustrious career in high school sports?
Yeah. Look at that. This is what I wanted to see before you go into that.
Yeah.
Get that wide shot of the benches. They're running in.
Yeah. It's like a Game of Thrones battle where they're running at each other. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love how different ethnicities, like Polynesians, especially Samoans, are, and actually I think the Eye of Providence is Samoan,
I have a
heavily
story.
associated with like football.
I have a story about Samoan fighting in football.
Yeah, I bet you do. Whereas like Dominicans in America are heavily associated, Latin Americans in general, but especially Dominicans are heavily associated with baseball.
Baseball, yeah.
Hockey is like, it's white people
And
in
natives.
General.
Whites and natives.
Yeah, but also like Eastern Europeans and Northern Europeans.
Northern Europeans, yeah.
But yeah, your story.
Oh yeah, so we had my last year of playing my senior year. I only played up through high school in football, but I played 8 years total. So I mean, it was a big part of my life, at least for the first part of my life, American football. And we got a crazy gigantic man who was a great player. His name was Junior, which was his nickname. I forget what his actual name was, but everyone called him Junior. And he was like 6'7", and he had just come to Seattle from American Samoa, and so he was just monster man, like like a great player. But
a lot of Samoans for some reason around Seattle.
Yeah, we got a huge Polynesian population out here. Like there's Samoans in my neighborhood, right where I live right now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, so we unfortunately lost the game, right? And so we lost the game, and we were like, damn, we lost the game. We were like gonna run. We was an away game, so we were gonna go back to the locker room, change, and we were gonna take the bus back to to our school. And but this was like the very first time that this guy Junior, when there was nothing junior about him, he's like 6'7", 300 something pounds, a huge man. It's the first time he'd ever played football on the mainland. So, and he's like, well, aren't we going to fight? And so he runs out on the field to try to start fighting the other players. And we're like, what the hell are you doing? You're going to get us like we're never going to be able to play again if you do this. He's like, don't you fight? We're like, no, we don't fight on the mainland after the game is over. Junior.
After the game is over?
Yeah, he went out to try to start a fight after the game was over. And I was like, well, what are you doing, bud? Because and even the other team was like, huh?
You're 10 ply, bud. That's fucking crazy.
So God bless the Samoans. I love you. But I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
So speaking
that's a difference of culture in how different
culture.
Players play. Like in the NHL, fights are acceptable, but the Quebecois League fights are acceptable, but also they're more than acceptable. They're expected.
Well, what was the average frequency of fights in the Quebecois League? How many fights per game?
3 fights per game, and the NHL at this point is under.
It's under one. Yeah, it's definitely under one. If I know we just got a few more minutes. If you want to see, to finish it off.
I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah. No, I got a little bit of time. So this is to shout out to again. I don't hate the Bruins.
I love Polynesians. Obviously, I love Polynesians.
We
love.
Yeah. We love you. I don't hate the Bruins. All the love to the Bruins. I do like to root against the Bruins, but I can respect the Bruins. This is a famous. This is probably the most famous NHL fight in history. This is at the end of a game in 1979 between Boston Bruins at New York Rangers in Madison Square Garden.
And that's in New York. This is another one of these New York versus Boston, New York versus New England things, which are so common.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling it up right now.
All right, yeah, no, I cherry picked these for you because I know that you're a New England guy. So
thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Also, before we do this, I need to tell you guys, bring back the Whalers. They left in 1993 or 4. We lost the only team in Connecticut, the only team outside of Massachusetts in a major league sport in New England, the only one of them. And we lost them. I wish I had a Whalers jersey. They still sell them around here. But,
that's kind of like Sonics in Seattle. Everyone wants the Sonics to come back.
Yes, the basketball team.
Yeah, basketball.
Yeah, this is what year did you say this was?
79.
79. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got the goalie out. Damn, he just broke his stick.
Yeah. So Esposito skates off the ice. He's really pissed, but then everyone else stays on the ice. If you want to put on a little bit of the audio, the old school sports announcers are great.
Esposito came through all by himself behind the defense, and Cheevers took it away from him. Well, they're milling around there. I don't know what the
game is now over, by the way.
The temper's frayed.
Game is over.
Yeah.
Nobody's thrown a punch, but instead of
Hey, just for the fans, New York and Boston are pretty close to each other. So at these games, you have a lot of away fans who will travel for it.
going to the dressing room, they're milling around. The only one who's gone to the dressing room is Phil Esposito. After Bork had it, went for the empty net, blocked by Greshner. Somehow they fed Esposito from the blue line in, all alone, and Cheevers, what a stop.
He made a tremendous stop. Esposito took a stick and broke it over.
You can
on the
maybe
glass
maybe
in
fast
about
forward
three
like
pieces,
30
but-
seconds or so, because when the fight when
And
they
this
really
is
start.
gonna
Oh
be-
yeah, back it up a little bit. You went too far.
Scored.
Okay. So then the actual fights
As,
start happening.
The fans are now getting involved.
So it's a brawl. They're climbing over.
As O'Reilly is out
Damn.
in the stands, and this is going to be something. O'Reilly's into the stands fighting with a Ranger fan, and all the Bruins are going over. Gilbert is in there. Peter McNabb. They're all into the stands. McNabb's
Good
going
God.
up to grab somebody about 7 or 8 rows.
Dude,
up.
the guy in the jean jacket, he's like, nope,
Well, this
nope,
is too
I'm not
bad
doing
that
it.
after
Not
the game
doing
is
this.
Over, it gets out of hand like this.
He grabs his shoe
And,
and then hits him in the
you
butt.
got to worry about a spectator.
Well, the Bruins are at a
Good
decided
God.
disadvantage.
If you did this today, there would be arrests, by the way.
Yeah, there would be arrests today.
Fred with those skates, and somebody could get seriously hurt.
Oh, this does the game no good at all. The breakout, but they failed to clear the ice at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have Providence.
And all the
Providence, those are
Bruins.
goons or enforcers that they would hire.
Right.
Yeah.
We talked about this, the Eye of Providence. We talked about this right before you joined. But yes, they're called either enforcers or goons, and those are guys that are they could be also regular players, but
Yeah.
there are guys that would sit on the bench, and when they need somebody to take a beating, they pull out the enforcer. Also, this is unrelated Eye of Providence, but we had done the Samoan video a while ago. Did you talk to any of your family about the Margaret Mead thing? Did you talk to any of your older family with that? I would love to hear what they said about it, if they remembered it, because I know you're younger and you had never heard of it. This stuff happened back in the 60s and 70s. But yeah, do you have anything to say on this?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Well, like, yeah, on the you mean on the Boston the Bruins Rangers fight here?
Yeah.
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 It's not only is it the most egregious example of like what a fight can get out of hand. I mean, this I mean, I guess I'll say this. This is what happens when like both teams basically just hate each other so much already. I mean, obviously the fight is a result of what happened at the end of the game and the whole game leading up to it. But I was actually watching a documentary about this fight. I don't have the link with me right now, but what some of the Bruins players, they interviewed them, and they were saying that like the New York fans were throwing batteries at them.
Oh, wow.
And like light bulbs and batteries were being thrown at them and stuff like that. And this was just a thing that the Rangers kind of normalized. That was, if you're going to go play an away game at Madison Square Garden against the Rangers, you're going to get batteries thrown at your face and stuff like that. So, I mean, basically, like, we can look at this and say, this is an insane video. Why are they going into the stands? But basically, the distinction, the ritual of the violence had broken down so far that it wasn't even contained to the ice, I guess, is the point that this video makes, right? Like, sometimes the unwritten code of hockey controls the violence, and that is why it's there. That's why, by the way, NHL continue to allow fights. There's a purpose and a reason for them.
Right.
It's
like a control valve,
it's a
like
control
a pressure
valve.
release valve.
It's a control valve. You know, but even the best pressure control release valve can't sometimes stop the hatred between New York and Boston, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, you can only control that violence so much. But again, I'm on Bruins side on this one. Even though I happily root against them. The Rangers are crazy. And I mean, if you're throwing batteries at people, that's not legit. And apparently, yeah, like, again, all very biased, but according to some of the older Bruin players they interviewed, there would just like be a non-zero chance that you might get in a fight. I think also like outside of the rink, like outside of the arena, like because the people just hate, like the New York fans hated Boston so much.
Right. Right.
And this is the 70s too. This is pre-Giuliani New York. So you've seen like Taxi Driver. It's kind of like this era of like New York's like real kind of out of control at this point in American history, I would argue. So it's not surprising that the fan culture reflects this and that you have hockey players jumping into the stands. So it's also kind of like a very interesting cultural artifact of late 70s America where this happens. I do believe that this is one of the main reasons why the NHL started making the glass much taller, is not just to protect fans from errant pucks, but also like so that they couldn't have this, let's say, this level of fan player interaction.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Pics with your favorite player. If you catch him after the game and they're willing to do it, don't mob anybody. If they're willing to take a picture with them, that's great, right? If they consent. But what had happened was apparently one of the New York fans had grabbed one of the Bruins sticks from him, which the camera never picked up, and was actually swinging the stick at the players. So, and if that is true, and I'm apt to believe it, that means that the fans who are not hockey players are not following the code. They're using a stick to fight. Not only are they not part of the team, they're actually using a weapon in fighting. And you, as we've said, you never do that in hockey. You never do that. So that's why, if you're wondering why people are getting their butts beat with somebody's shoe and they're being spanked on national television, it's because the fans are not following the code, right?
And they're not expected to follow the code because
they're not expected to follow the code, but they're also not expected to engage in the fighting, right?
Yeah, that is outside of the code entirely, and that becomes a separate thing.
Yeah. So, and in that video, it passed from ritual violence maybe into more something closer to an actual fight, right? Like an actual kind of mob kind of thing. Yeah.
And that's what can happen when you start doing things outside of the rules of the code, the unwritten rules, which are still rules.
They're still rules. Yeah. Because again, as Rene Girard would say, the only thing that controls violence is violence, unfortunately. And so ritual violence exists in cultures, whether that's hockey or some sort of, ancient feud between two clans in Scotland. Ritual violence exists to keep things from spilling over into absolute, like, end all total war, basically. But the downside of using violence to control violence is sometimes it gets out of, even the controlled violence gets out of hand, right? It doesn't solve the problem of violence. Ultimately, we're still kind of left with that as humans. So anyhow, I highly recommend everyone read Rene Girard. He's kind of pointy-headed academic type, but he's been widely translated. JD Vance is a huge fan of his work, if that means anything. I don't know if that means anything.
It means something to me.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
Peter Thiel is also a huge fan of Girard. So I think Girard has some good things to say about violence, and I think that hockey and sports in general is a great way of viewing that from a modern, let's say, Western, industrialized society lens. So anyhow, thanks. Thanks for letting me nerd out about hockey and violence. So.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for coming. It was a good talk. Go Birds on Sunday. Fine. Yeah. Go Birds.
I don't really care, but it's fine.
But yeah, if you want to support my work, look below. There's $2 a month on Patreon. I'm about to bump it up. This live stream I'm going to leave up because I'm going to leave up the ones that are with other people and for specific things. But you'll get the live streams that I do that are unthemed. You'll get those, which I'm now taking down. And that gives me a little bit more ability to do unthemed streams. And soon I'm going to have another episode out. I gotta edit that to post it. And then the next episode after that, which also, if you're a channel member, $5 a month, or a Patreon member for $2 a month, you get those episodes unedited and early. We got a interview with Elizabeth Weiss, Dr. Elizabeth Weiss, who is a former professor from San Jose University, and she is kind of like, she's incredible. She's absolutely incredible. Yes, I did add membership. It also gives you some emojis, which is really cool. Elizabeth Weiss is a physical anthropologist. We had a great conversation. I think everyone's really going to love it. Some of you have already seen it because it's out on the Patreon. And I've got a couple social scientists coming on, an Australian and an American guy together. Sorry, Irish, not Australian. An Irish guy and an American guy who are coming on, who did some psychological stuff. I think the Irish guy is about to go to Oxford for his master's or PhD in clinical psychology. So that should be a good conversation. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. Sign up for that if you want to support my work. Check me out on Twitter and also Doc Brown on Twitter. I forgot to put his link down below, but I'll edit it right now to have it.
Yes.
And any questions for me before we hop off? Any questions for Doc Brown before we hop off?
Well, I'll tease this. I'll check back in with you, probably just on Twitter sometime. In about a few weeks here, I'm going to a Kraken game, go Kraken, and it's against our regional rival, the Vancouver Canucks, and that is only 2.5 hours away, even though it's in Canada. So I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of Canuck fans there. It will be very interesting to see what the vibe is, let's say, in the stands and on the ice. We'll see. I'm looking forward to it. So
yes. And because we've also had this secondary conversation about Margaret Mead and her slandering of our beloved Polynesians in Samoa.
Mead was bad, man. Mead was just bad news.
Mead was bad news. What she did was not great. It wasn't really her fault, I guess. There's more details to it, but the effect of what she did was lying about a group of Indigenous people, which is something that is very bad in anthropology and unfortunately slanders an entire group of people. So,
and it's also unfortunately very common.
Do I remember the name of the Mead doc? I don't remember the name of it, but
was it
that
Adolescence in Samoa?
No, something? That was her book. It's not exactly that, but I did a live stream on it, which is still available. That's going to stay up on the channel. That wasn't an unthemed stream. I think that is still available. Margaret Mead in Samoa, is it still up? Maybe it's not. I think I pulled it down because I was going to post a video on it. It might still be up, but I don't remember the documentary. I'm sorry. Coming of Age in Samoa.
Yeah.
That was the name of the book, but the documentary is different. What did we do? We did First Contact. I recommend everyone watch that live stream. The First Contact, that one is still public. First Contact was about Papua New Guinea though. Damn it. Did I pull that one down? I think I was going to make a video about it, but it got corrupted, unfortunately. The file I didn't get it. Yeah, it's not live. You can watch it if you're a channel member or it's on the Patreon. I was going to post a video about it, but unfortunately the file got corrupt in StreamYard. So I don't have the file. I can still do it, but it'll be more difficult to make a video of it. And that's very unfortunate. And I need to see if I made a mistake or if it was just on StreamYard's end. But I was not happy about that. Okay, you got anything? Any questions we got? We'll stay up for a second.
Yeah, no,
if there's any questions,
I'm not in a hurry.
In
no, I got some time.
I got to fix my water heater. Fucking bullshit.
It's cold over there.
I know. I haven't taken a shower. This is not the documentary that I was talking about. The documentary that I was talking about was Margaret Mead in Samoa in 1988, and that's from Australia, and it's publicly available on YouTube. I'll see about posting a video that has parts of it cut down. I'm really not happy with StreamYard for that, but other than that, I've loved StreamYard. You don't have your own YouTube yet, do you?
Me? I do. I don't. Oh. I do have, it's The Wandering Humanists. It tends to be, we do not do live streams. I mean, maybe at some point I might graduate up to that. It's more of a scheduling thing. My guests usually we have to find specific times to do stuff. It's The Wandering Humanists. We talk about kind of this kind of stuff, probably a little bit. We talk about things like, literature. I have a degree in religious history. So we talk a lot about religion. I also
have a PhD in religious history.
I have a PhD in and
right.
I do stuff with I have an MA in linguistics actually too. So we do both language. We kind of combine language and myth and religion and literature and movies and kind of stories in general together. So yeah, check it out. It's up there for free. I refuse to monetize because that's just me. I just don't. It's out there for people to see it if they want to. Yeah,
you should.
It's more this
monetized.
kind of stuff. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I do this full time, so it's like
Yeah.
I have to monetize so I can
No
continue doing
no
it.
judgment.
That's kind of the
No, it's
plan.
for me, it's that I work. I have a kind of a crazy work schedule, but I do manage to make as long as I can keep making money doing the stuff I'm doing. I'm not going to monetize. You know, I would rather I do this stuff on my channel just to get this kind of. I want people to be excited about culture and language and stories. I think that that's kind of an important thing we need in the world, as cheesy as that sounds. So yeah, but no, everyone subscribe to the Patreon and do stuff with Illegitimate Scholar, because this is a great resource for all those things. I will gladly shill for my friends. Yeah.
Sweet. I
Just not
appreciate it. Yeah. I'm making more money now. I think I'm about to start a productivity channel to more directly monetize. I like to keep as much as I can publicly available, just because I think that's a better way to do it. Like, I don't want to have a lot of good information behind a paywall. Most of the people that support my work, it seems like a lot of it is just to help support my work. And I appreciate that from everybody. Thank you. It lets me keep doing this. But I need to make a little bit more money to sustain myself and to continue to do this. So I think I'm going to start a productivity channel, which will be very easy for me, and talk about like Twitter and stuff. If anyone wants to grow on Twitter, by the way, I'm doing affiliate stuff now with the guy who really helped me.
I gotta sit at the foot of the master here, because I'm notoriously bad at Twitter.
Well, dude, I mean, we can talk about that after we go off live. Yeah. But anybody who wants to grow on Twitter in order to make money online, I can hook you up. Just DM me on Twitter with a person I trust and the work that he does. At varying levels of expense. I've given this guy oh crap, my video's down. The battery's dead. I have AC. You can get AC power for my camera, but there are 2 pieces you need to buy, and they are literally $500 in total to get them. And that sucks. So I'm not going to do that. So I have to deal with the batteries, but it's, I've purchased over $4,000, from the Twitter courses. You don't have to spend that much, but I have over time. And that has helped me I've gotten every dollar back and then some, because of how I've been able to monetize because of it. So yeah, reach out to me on DMs on Twitter about that if you want to. And Doc Brown, if you're interested in that, we can talk about that.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and on Margaret Mead, while we're here, oh, sorry, that's the wrong comment. She wasn't academically canceled. It's like usually the stated reason for the cancellation, per se, like cancellation for lack of a better word, of academics is the stated purpose is because of something like that. But in reality, there are other reasons for it. And Margaret Mead was not only not canceled, she was defended by a lot of Western academics. And I view that as pretty disgusting. And a lot of times it's not like I legitimately care about indigenous people, which is a bit of a loaded term, but like it's a lot of what anthropology does. I legitimately really do care about how they're represented and being respectful of them. But a lot of times what happens is what is perceived by the field at large of what is being respectful of indigenous people is decided by the largely upper class white academia, the intelligentsia of the West.
Can confirm.
That is often not actually what I would think a lot of them want. And also indigenous people are extraordinarily diverse.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a very broad term. So what a certain indigenous person, they are people, what a certain indigenous person or a group of indigenous people wants might be different from what someone else does. And I think in the case of Margaret Mead, it is extremely clear that what she did and said was disrespectful. And I think what Western academia did to her or how they supported her and what they did to Samoa is extremely offensive and gross. And I'm saying that not from like a woke perspective. Sometimes I get accused of being woke because of how I defend, stuff, but I truly, that is how I actually feel. I don't want to cancel anybody, but I also think that being respectful of people being studied is something that's actually very serious. And there's
If I can opine for 2
Yep,
seconds on
please.
that, because I think the point what I would say on that is it's important that you and I and other people point out that, because it shows how hypocritical the largely white Western woke academia intelligentsia type people really are.
Yeah.
They're
Largely white, but a subsection of the white population. They're
Right.
they're upper class.
Yeah, it's upper class whites and who get to tell, I mean, if I might be usable, the brown people what this is how the brown people are. And I'm like, but have you ever talked to the brown people about how the brown people are? Maybe let the brown people. I'm more interested in what the indigenous people have to say about things, right? Like,
and what they'll often do is they'll pick almost a token. They'll pick they'll pick a representative who then speaks for all of them, which never makes any sense. But it's like it's not. I don't agree with it.
I'm an anecdote factory, but if I can share one little anecdote from this past week, I work multiple jobs. It's just the way it is. I work some teaching jobs, some online jobs, and then one in-person job. That's a really working class job. And my manager is he's a dual citizen, Canada, US, but he's First Nations Canadian, and he's pretty great. And he's MAGA. So there you go. They have a MAGA indigenous person, and it's like, and he confuses everyone because he likes Trump, and it's like, well, yeah, because they're not a monolith. There's all different reasons for why people do or don't like any political party or group, right? Like they're not just one person. It's not like they're not all the same, man. Like it's just, I don't know. I think I've said this before when I've been on before. When I hear academics say these kinds of things about quote unquote indigenous people, I wonder how many quote unquote indigenous people they've actually talked to.
Right. and of the indigenous people they have talked to, what other factors factor into that group of people? Because there's plenty of indigenous people that are also, just like it's a subsection of white people that are in the intelligentsia, the upper class academia, it is a subsection of indigenous people that are often the ones that are talking to those same subsection of white people, and also other races, but disproportionately a subsection of white people of the upper class. And this comment, I really like this comment. By taking away the indigenous people's agency and making them victims was devastating for them. Each people has a right to be responsible for themselves. Like the other day, I did a thread, and that thread was about a archaeological site from the American Midwest. And this was a pre-Columbian 14th century site where there was almost 500 Native Americans. We're not sure which tribe or nation specifically, but related to like the Arikari and some other Midwestern tribes and nations. That was a thing that happened, and I talked about it. And there were some people in the comments who were like, "Oh, you're being racist. You're helping people to like talk about how bad the Native Americans are." It's like, no, I view Native Americans as people. I view them as whole people, like any other people who are capable of the full range of human emotions. They're capable of good. They're capable of evil.
Right.
They're capable of everything because they are human beings. And I'm not going like I give them, just like I would give all humans, the dignity and the respect to do bad things, just like they do good things. And I'm not going to not talk about a bad thing that a group of people did just because it's a bad thing. And those people, and I don't want to talk about them doing something bad and only talk about the good.
Yeah.
And there were actual Native Americans who I'm mutuals with below that thread talking about it. And just like they would be below my threads where I talk about like Native American art, Native Americans being victims of bad things.
Right.
I'm going to talk about all of it. I'm going to talk about the stuff that's interesting. I'm not going to select the topics based on the perception of them as victims. They're not just victims. People can be victims. They can be oppressors. They can be everything.
I agree. The only time that I agree 100%. The only time that I would selectively choose my sources is in order to make the New York Rangers look worse than they already are. So there you go. That's justified, completely justified. So,
yeah. I'm not aware of this Fingal. Never heard this guy's name actually. And then the Eye of Providence, 100%. Derek Freeman talked about it all. He didn't sugarcoat Samoan culture. He said the truth. Right. And Derek Freeman, who was the guy who was who basically exposed Margaret Mead for what she did. I mean, he was a guy who was heavily involved in Samoan culture. He was made a honorary chief by specific people. You can actually, in that documentary, see video footage of a ceremony where Derek Freeman is receiving that honor from the Samoan people, specific Samoan people, because there's also distinctions between different Samoans. And obviously it meant a lot to him as somebody who was heavily involved in their culture. I mean, he's crying in it because he's overwhelmed with emotion. And Derek Freeman was not being disrespectful to Samoans. He viewed them as whole individuals capable of good and bad, and wanting to understand who they were as people in the whole sense, rather than just for a subsection of their belief system and what they did. And I think that's the right way to do it. And not everyone's going to agree with me, but I think that the people who know me know that I am not being that my intent is not to take away anyone's agency. My intent is not to view anybody in a bad light. My intent is to do actual study and to understand people in general, but also Indigenous people as a whole.
Well, your intent is to do what the field of anthropology purports to do, but you're actually trying to do it.
Right. And the Eye of Providence, who is a Samoan, as a Samoan, I agree with you. And he's saying that as a Samoan, and other Samoans might disagree with me. And that's okay, because there are differences in understanding between different groups of people within different groups of people. Like, these are groups that have traits in general, and also individuals who have any sort of variance. Just like I'm a white guy, I'm a white millennial from New England, and another white millennial from New England might think something totally different from me. And every group of people, every individual should be given that same respect. And that's my personal belief. And other people don't have to agree with it, but that is how I feel. And my intent is, I think, pretty clear. And if someone, I know my intent in my heart, and other people can agree or disagree with that, but I'm not going to apologize to anybody for it.
Yeah, nor should you.
Right. Cool. I ranted.
No, I had a rant, so everyone gets a rant. It's your show.
Yeah.
Rant.
That's what we're doing here. We rant here. Yeah. And I'm very grateful for everybody for being here. Thank you so much for being here and discussing all this stuff. And I'll see you soon. I'm gonna go edit that episode, get it out, and then I'm gonna work on. I got some more Dibble stuff. I'm gonna expand on the maritime archaeology stuff.
The Dibble dribble.
The Dibble dribble. Yeah, he just lied, man. Pretty much everything he said about underwater archaeology, both in shipwrecks and other stuff, is just wrong.
I don't know anything about archaeology, but he represents for me, the archetype of the know-it-all PhD that is part of the reason, one of the main reasons why I almost never introduce myself as somebody in like real life as having a PhD, because oftentimes I don't want to become that archetype, right? Have you considered that? I have a degree on my wall. Okay, great. Thanks.
Yeah.
What have you
Congratulations.
done?
I have 3 bachelor's degrees, and they're sitting in a crate behind me. I didn't even go to my graduation. I don't give a shit.
Yeah. I didn't go to my PhD graduation.
You didn't go to your PhD graduation?
I didn't go. I wanted to be done.
Nice. Good for you, man.
Yeah.
I went to a bar while it was happening.
Based.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't give a shit. Never gave a shit. Yeah. Magna cum laude, 3 degrees in 4 years, 172 credits when I only needed 120. I don't care.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. What matters is the information.
Yep. Amen.
All right. Later, everybody.
Bye-bye.